Tonight's stories all have one thing in common: a quiet room, a dark window, and that awful feeling that something outside is looking back. There's something especially unsettling about nighttime stories like these. Not the loud kind of fear, not the kind that jumps out at you, just that slow, creeping feeling when everything is still, everything is supposed to be safe, and then one small thing feels wrong. The light turning on, the soft tapping sound, the car that keeps showing up. And the worst part is, most of the time, the people in these stories try and explain it away at first. They tell themselves it's nothing, an animal, a coincidence, their imagination, until it isn't. So tonight I'm gonna read 3 creepy, realistic stories that all feel a little too possible. The kind of stories that make you check your window, and then maybe wish you hadn't. So get comfortable, turn the lights down low, and let's get into it. Story 1, The Motion Light. I live alone in a pretty normal suburban neighborhood. Nothing bad ever really happens here, which is why this got under my skin so much. A few months ago I started noticing my backyard motion light turning on at random times during the night. At first I didn't think much of it because we get raccoons sometimes, and there's also a stray cat that cuts through people's yards. So whenever I'd notice the light come on through my curtains, I'd kind of just glance out and go back to bed. But then it started happening almost every night, always between like 2 and 3 a.m. The weird part was it never stayed on for long. It would just click on, stay lit for maybe 10 seconds, then go dark again, like something had triggered it and then moved out of range. One night, I was still awake in bed scrolling on my phone when it came on again. The room overlooks the backyard, so I sat up and looked through the blinds. Nothing. No animal, no person, no branches moving, nothing. I remember just sitting there because the yard is fenced in and not that big. There really wasn't anywhere for something to go without me seeing it. Then the light shut off. About 5 seconds later, it turned on again. That made my stomach drop because whatever triggered it either hadn't left or had stepped back into range on purpose. I got up and locked my bedroom door, which I know sounds dumb because if someone was in the backyard, that wouldn't really do anything, but it made me feel a little better. Then I texted my brother, who lives like 15 minutes away, and told him something weird was going on. He didn't answer because it was in the middle of the night. I ended up staying awake with my lamp on until morning. The next day I checked the yard and didn't see anything except for one muddy shoe print right underneath my back window. Not on the patio, not by the gate, right under my window. I told myself it was probably old and I just hadn't noticed it before. But honestly, I knew that was bullshit. I would have seen it. After that, I bought one of those cheap security cameras off Amazon and pointed it at the yard. For almost a week, nothing happened. Then one night I got motion notification on my phone around 2:17 a.m. I opened the app expecting to see a raccoon or something. At first the yard looked empty. Then I noticed someone standing completely still at the very edge of the camera view, half hidden beside the fence. You could only really see part of their shoulder and one side of their face. They looked like they'd been standing there long enough to know exactly where the camera could and couldn't catch them. I froze. I genuinely couldn't move for a second. Before I could even think about calling the police, the person slowly leaned back out of the frame like they realized the camera caught them. The cops came and checked around but didn't find anyone. They asked if maybe it was a neighbor cutting through, which made me want to scream because no normal person stands in someone's fenced backyard at 2 in the morning. I moved a month later for unrelated reasons, but I still think about that stupid motion light all the time. What bothers me most is that who knows how long I kept assuming it was an animal, and whoever it was probably knew that. That first one is the kind of story that gets worse the longer you think about it, because it wasn't just that someone was outside, it's that they may have been outside more than once, quietly watching long enough to understand their routine. This next story has that same slow, awful feeling, the kind where something tiny keeps happening over and over until one night you finally see what's causing it. Story 2. Someone kept tapping. This happened when I was in college and living in this tiny second-floor apartment behind an old converted house. The whole place was kind of weird. Not haunted weird, just old and creaky and never totally quiet. My bedroom had one window that looked out over the side yard and the driveway. Since I was on the second floor, I always felt pretty safe leaving the blinds cracked open at night. One night, around 1 a.m., I was in bed watching YouTube when I heard this soft tapping sound. Not loud, just 3 little taps on the window. I looked up right away. There was nothing there. I figured maybe a branch was brushing against it, except there wasn't a tree anywhere close enough. A few minutes later, it happened again. Tap, tap, tap. At that point, I got up and looked out the window. The driveway was empty, the yard was empty, and everything looked normal. I even opened the window a little and listened. Nothing. So I shut it and went back to bed. Then maybe 10 minutes later, it happened a third time. Same exact pattern. 3 taps. I was officially freaked out by then, but I'm also really good at convincing myself stuff is explainable. So I started thinking maybe it was the heater or pipes expanding or something. The next night it happened again. Same time, same 3 taps. This went on for 4 nights. By then I told my downstairs neighbor about it. She laughed at me at first, but when I said it sounded like it was coming directly from the glass, she got kind of serious and asked if I'd seen anyone around. I said no because I hadn't. On the 5th night, I decided to leave my lamp off and just stay awake to see if it happened again. At 12:53 a.m., I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I was already sitting up, so this time I immediately looked out the window, and I saw a hand slide down from the bottom edge of the glass. I still get sick thinking about it. Just the fingertips at first, then the rest of the hand disappearing downward like whoever it belonged to had been holding themselves up right outside my window. I screamed so loud I'm surprised the whole block didn't hear me. I called 911 and my downstairs neighbor came running up while I was on the phone crying. Police found a ladder leaning against the side of the house. Not ours, just some random metal ladder positioned right below my window. Apparently someone had been climbing up there at night. We never found who it was. What makes it worse is realizing that every time I went to the window before that, they were probably already crouched down low enough so I couldn't see them, just waiting for me to look around and assume I was imagining it. I never slept with cracked blinds again after that. I think that's one of the creepiest stories there is, not because something impossible happened, but because it was completely real, completely physical. A ladder, a hand, a person close enough to touch the glass. That brings us to the last story. This one isn't loud either. It's quiet in a different way. No tapping, no motion light, just the same car showing up over and over again until the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Story 3, the same car. This one isn't dramatic in the usual horror story way, but it scared me more than anything that's ever happened to me. I used to get home really late from work, usually around 11:30 p.m. My apartment complex had assigned parking, and my spot was right near the back fence under a dim light that barely worked. One night when I pulled in, there was this dark sedan parked a few spaces away with the engine running. I noticed it because there weren't many cars out that late, and the headlights were off, which felt weird. But I didn't think too much of it. I grabbed my stuff and went inside. The next night, same car, same spot, again, engine running. I remember slowing down a little when I drove past it, trying to see if someone was inside. The windows were tinted enough that I couldn't tell. On the third night it was there again. At that point I told myself it was probably just someone waiting for their boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. People sit in their cars all the time. I didn't want to be dramatic. Then I started noticing something else. And the nights the car was there, it would leave a few minutes after I got inside. Not right away, just long enough that it felt maybe they were waiting. I only realized because my apartment faced the parking lot and I could hear the engine when it pulled off. After that, I got in the habit of sitting by the window with the lights off for a few minutes after I got home. Every single time the car was there, it would stay parked until my upstairs light came on, then leave within maybe 5 minutes. That's when I started getting scared. I told my friend about it, and she said to get the plate number, which sounds obvious now at the time, but I was too nervous to walk back outside once I was in. So the next night, before going home, I parked at the gas station across the complex and waited. About 15 minutes later, the same sedan pulled into my parking lot and parked in that same spot. I watched it for a minute, then drove in and parked like normal. I didn't look over at it. I just got out and walked inside like I hadn't noticed anything. But this time, instead of going up to my apartment, I stayed in the stairwell where I could peek through the little window facing the lot. The driver's door opened. A man got out and walked towards my building. He wasn't carrying anything. He wasn't on his phone. He just walked straight towards the entrance and stopped right outside it. Then he stood there, not knocking, not buzzing anyone, just standing there looking at the door. I had this horrible feeling he was waiting to see which apartment I went into. I stayed completely still and called the police. While I was whispering to the dispatch, the guy stepped back, looking up at the building for a few seconds, then went back to his car and left. The cops actually took it seriously, which surprised me. They said it could have been nothing, but also told me I did the right thing. A week later, another woman in my complex posted in our resident Facebook group, asking if anyone had noticed a dark sedan following them in the night. Turns out I wasn't the only one. I moved not long after. To this day, I still do a full scan of the parking lot before I get out my car at night. Because maybe it was random, but I really don't think it was. These stories are exactly the kind that stay with you. Not because they're full of monsters or gore or anything dramatic, but because they felt like they could happen to anyone. A light turning on in the yard, a soft tapping at the window, a car that keeps showing up at night. Small things, easy things to dismiss, until suddenly they're not small anymore. If you made it all the way to the end, let me know which story got to you the most. For me, I think the tapping one is the worst. There's just something about realizing someone was that close, and had probably been there before. And if you want more soft-spoken, creepy stories like this for late night listening, feel free to stay a while. Good night, and maybe don't look outside.